up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Anthony Yarde. Anthony Yarde, after close observation, is officially on the redemption list. Now, what put him there was not necessarily his loss, but his return. Okay, we know, backtrack, Anthony Yarde was on his way to a very risky fight with Kovalev. Kovalev was either out of his prime or was on his way out. In that fight alone, it went back and forth. Yarde looked comfortable. He looked like he could handle Kovalev, like he belonged in the same ring as Kovalev. And by the end of the 7th round, his trainer told him that Kovalev had nothing else. Go for the gusto. Take him out. And Yarde hurt him with massive hooks, but he did it too late. He hurt Kovalev, put pressure on Kovalev, which Kovalev hates, by the way. And he had him hurt, but he did not put him down or out. After the 9th round came around, we could clearly see around the end of the 9th, into the 10th, Yarde started to tire. Okay, he started to tire because he was punched out, and that could have been a couple factors that resulted in Anthony Yarde being too tired. He was put down with a jab. He had nothing left. He was beat by exhaustion, pure exhaustion, okay? Not just a good jab. The jab helped, but Yarde was on his way out of there because Kovalev showed him he had more in the tank. That comes from experience. Kovalev didn't punch himself out. He didn't use everything he had in the tank because he didn't get the wrong instructions like Anthony Yarde did, okay? However, you have to at some point see how that affected Yarde, okay? What condition Yarde was in to tire out in the 8th round, to go for the gusto and tire himself out. He's a young kid. This isn't Luis Ortiz, okay, battling Deontay Wilder and giving him everything he can handle. This is a young guy, okay? This is a young guy, and he shouldn't tire like that. You know, he's 28 years of age. He should be right at his peak right now. So something must have been wrong in strength and conditioning in that area, because he should have lasted 12 rounds. But if you look at a guy like Yarde, I'm looking here at a lot of his fights, and none of them are past 10 rounds. None of them. They were scheduled for 10, a lot of them, but there were KOs to his credit. Rounds 4, round 7, rounds 4, round 5. Okay, and he was put down. And actually, this was the first time he went past that. So, for one, his trainer shouldn't have told him to use all the energy that he may or may not have. Obviously, he didn't have it because he didn't have nothing left when Kovalev started his assault. Okay, in the 11th round, by the way. Now, I was going to give him a break because Anthony Yarde, again, he's a young fighter. He was beat by a champion, by a guy that was the boogeyman of the division. In the boogeyman of the division, he got upset a couple of times with Andre Ward and Eliezer Alvarez. We know that, okay? But he showed he still had something left, especially in the Yarde fight. And Yarde coming in there, he should have been in the best shape of his life, and I don't think he was. But then again, you can't really train for something that you've never done. You know what I mean? It takes experience to go those distances, those rounds. So unless they sparred for those type of rounds, that's what we had. But he told him to go for the gusto. That's why he ran out of gas. However, he lost. He takes his first loss. He goes now from 18 wins, 17 by KO, 1 loss. Okay, that's still a great resume. What put him on the redemption list, you add, is his comeback fight. He chose an easy road. He chose to fight Diego Jair Ramirez from Colombia, now lives in Spain. The man has lost 8 out of 10 of his last fights. I don't really know what to really say about him. He's like ranked like 500 and so on the list, on the rankings from BoxRec. You know, he's a durable fighter. We can say that. He's only been stopped 5 times. But who is he? Nobody has ever heard of this guy. Yes, I know this is a tune-up. This has tune-up written all over it. The only problem is this will not prepare him for anybody. So at what point do they think that they're going to put Yarde in there with someone credible? It just shows me that this is like, hey, this is a pit stop. This is a tune-up to get confidence back. I get that, but guess what? This guy was beat. He had Kovalev rocked. The last thing you want to do with a prodigy like this is to bring him all the way back to zero, because this is what it feels like. He was almost there. He could have beat Kovalev. The game plan was wrong. The last thing you want to do is bring him in there and put him in with Ramirez and have him thinking that he's a knockout artist again. You know, you don't do that. You don't need soft touches, especially when you start raising the bar. Okay? For example, if you got a fighter that fought to the pinnacle, the last thing you want to do, and they lost, the last thing you want that fighter to do is fight somebody, some easy touch. Okay? You don't do that to a fighter. It lowers his morale. You know, it dulls his sharpness. See, Anthony Yarde needs a credible opponent. He doesn't need a tune-up. He needs someone that puts him somewhere that he needs to be, because once you raise to a certain level, people, that's where you're at. And it's if you sink or you swim. Not, oh, I was there, then I got beat, now I'm too afraid to compete. No, it doesn't work like that in the sport of boxing. It's a bad sign to have Anthony Yarde in there with a guy named Diego Jair Ramirez. Now you might say, well, you know, he's been decisioned a lot. He's went the distance a lot, but he's lost a lot. You know, that goes from skill, technicality. This guy's been fighting 8 years. But for someone that, I think a lot of this came from inexperience due to his trainer and from not being in shape, and that goes back on your trainer, right? I don't see this as necessary. I think this is a total waste of time. And therefore, since he's lost to Kovalev and he's not trying to fight anyone, or his people don't really believe in him for that point, he doesn't have a way right now to get off the list. But that's exactly what put him on the list, is that he didn't want to, or they didn't want him to compete at least a medium level. Okay? At least have him in there with people that we know of. You know, because at this point now, it makes you think that maybe they just tried for that one time, and then after that, they never want to try again. So what does that say about his career before? It was all fabricated. People can argue that now. You know, people can argue that, hey, Anthony Yarde was just all hype, because guess what? He ain't stepped up again after that. After that loss, he hasn't stepped up since. You don't want that to go on a young fighter. Okay? You don't want that. You have to prepare this guy to get back in there with someone credible. And I mean someone known, people. Not Diego Jair Ramirez from Colombia that I never heard of. You know, so he needs those type of fights. He doesn't need these type of tune-up fights to give him confidence. Confidence should already be there. Confidence should already let him know that, hey, I almost stopped Kovalev, okay? I almost took Kovalev out of the picture, because Elidor Alvarez tasted him, and if Anthony Yarde was able to do it, that means there wouldn't have been no Sergey Kovalev and Canelo, right? He could have stopped that whole thing. He could have stopped the whole thing, okay? So, again, I think that Anthony Yarde him and his team should really take his career more seriously by putting him in with better fighters. You know, I see tune-ups every so often for a fighter that lost, but it also shows me that maybe, just maybe, you know, his confidence is down a bit. You know, maybe he's dealing with something upstairs, a lot of regret. A lot of people, get depressed. A lot of people are depressed after taking their first loss, and they don't know how to handle it. So if that's the case, whatever. But I still think he needs stiffer competition. That's why he's on the redemption list. You guys tell me what you think about Anthony Yarde. How does he get off the list? Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.